I teach all the time this process of change, struggle, grow, succeed. And whichever season you're in right now, just know that it won't last because it's all seasonal. Everything's seasonal. If you're in a season of struggle right now, great. Growth is on the way. If you're in a season of success right now, great. Change is on the way. It's always evolving.
I like the way you phrase like AI isn't going to replace you. It's a power up tool. Then I started thinking, well, that really depends on each individual's approach to life and how they want to create value. Because in your example, and I recommend everybody goes and listens to that particular episode, but in your example of going to, using AI, and I think it was Notebook LM that you went to,
Yeah.
where in literally minutes you have what somebody developing content probably couldn't have come up with something that good in 2 weeks if they were really capable and worked on it. And so in one view, it would be, oh my gosh, my job's being replaced. I don't have this anymore. But those people, in my view, are like checking a box. And those that really want to create value, like we're creating this content to get to this end, like grow a dealership 800% or whatever, pick your business. It really doesn't matter. They're going to get excited about these power up tools because they can go even faster. But those that just want to check boxes and not personally grow and all of that, I can see where this would be really threatening. So I've been wanting to ask you this question. What's your advice for those folks? Because there's some that want no change, no personal growth, and others that want growth. They want change. They want to create value. They love these tools. What's your advice around that?
Yeah, I think that all of us are born to evolve. All of us are designed to grow, right? We grow through different seasons of life, from being a baby to being a toddler to being a child to being a teenager to being a young adult to being a not as young adult to starting to turn the corner into the silver years and the golden years and all of these things, right? And so I think we're all built that way. I also do believe, though, that we all kind of have different personality types, and how we approach change and how we approach growth can look very different. And it can be a scary thing, just like I'm sure, a caterpillar going into a cocoon can be quite scared before it comes out as the butterfly. And so I think it can be a scary thing. And so what I've seen throughout all of humanity is you always have those that are willing to go first. You always have those that are willing to go somewhere in the middle of the pack. And then you have those that are going to go last. And we just as leaders, especially, I think it's really important that I have grace and understanding that not everybody's going to move at the same pace, but at some point, everybody's going to move, right? My friend Heather, she has a friend that she was talking to the other day that's in the art community, and he draws kind of these infographics. He calls them doodles, but he draws these doodles for different businesses, keynote speakers, things like that. While he's listening to presentations, he'll draw these kind of doodles out of what they're doing, and he sells those. Companies hire him to do that. And he saw Notebook LM, and he saw the way that an infographic can be made in 60 seconds or less. That to be frank, his doodles probably can't quite even come to that level of professionalism. And so he's totally anti-AI for that reason. And I told Heather, I said, Heather, he's anti-AI because he thinks it's going to take his job. But what he's not seeing is that he can now take 10 times as many clients and use the AI to make the infographic and sell the infographic that he created through AI. What used to take him weeks can now be done in minutes. And so I think it just takes someone finally like understanding how exactly they can utilize it to benefit them, to kind of be able to open their eyes to it. As long as they think it's a threat, they're going to push it away.
Yeah, better work faster, create more value for his business. No question there.
Yeah, no doubt.
And what you're saying kind of resonates with a lot of the interactions I have with folks where somebody's going to be first. You have to get started, but getting on this growth journey, I think can be scary, for folks. What's your advice just to get people started? Because I do believe we all feel better. Everybody feels better when they're going down that growth road
Sure.
as opposed to being stuck. So for those that are just afraid to get started, probably just fear of failure, right? How they might look or whatever it is. What's your advice for those folks in getting started?
Yeah, I think it's important that you attach any and all actions to something bigger, some bigger version that you have of yourself or your family or the dynamics or your financial situation, like whatever it is, right? I think that we will do hard and scary things if we believe the prize on the other side is worth it, right? I'm not going to what do they call that where you slide on the rope across a canyon or something, gosh,
Like a zip lining or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not zip lining across the Grand Canyon. Some people probably don't wanna zip line across the Grand Canyon just for fun, but if you put a pot with $10,000,000 in gold coins, they're more likely to zip line across the Grand Canyon, and so, I think when it comes to, being fearful of change, you have to attach it to something bigger. How can this help me deliver on a dream that I've always had for me or for my spouse or for my children? How can this help connect me to a retirement that I have a desire for? How can this help connect me to a yacht that I want to buy one day? Like connect it to something bigger, and then it's easy to take the steps that it takes in order to embrace that change.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. And I would pay to zip line across the Grand Canyon. I would wear a parachute for safety, but man, that would be so much fun. So
It would be amazing, I think. I'm like you. I would do the same thing, man. I'd be scared, but my gosh, I would enjoy it. I grew up with the Grand Canyon in my backyard, so it's incredibly beautiful place, man.
yeah, I'm still here in Phoenix. I've been here for gosh, 40 plus years. So
Nice.
long
Yeah,
time.
I was in Flagstaff for 23.
Oh, amazing. Beautiful up there. Beautiful.
Yeah,
Cool. And so your book, I read it getting ready for this discussion today, the legacy titles. I listened to the audiobook actually, and I love the interviews after the chapters. And I'm curious. You explain this in the audiobook, but why did you choose to make it a parable going through after all the iterations getting ready for it?
yeah, that the concepts in that book kinda sat in a organized manner for about 4 years. Just kinda sitting there before I actually turned it into a book because, like, when I it felt boring to me. It really did. It felt boring. The concepts made sense. I'd applied them. We used them to grow a business 800%. I knew they could be helpful. I knew they could be valuable. But me personally, when I read through these concepts, I was like, oh my gosh, this is boring. Like, how do I liven this thing up? And so it sat on the shelf for years while I continued to ask myself that question. And it wasn't until I just kinda obviously inspiration from the best-selling book of all time, the Holy Bible, and the way that it was written and structured with parables to really help connect people to emotion, to really help people get a good picture of the concepts and the principles that it was looking to teach. So I saw that there, and obviously, as a speaker on stages, I understand the power of story and how if you and I can share a common experience, then it's easier to transfer knowledge. And so it just finally hit me like lightning in a bottle one day. I'm like, oh my gosh, let's take these principles and put them into a parable style that'll make it fun, that'll make it engaging, that'll make it entertaining. People can connect with the main characters and therefore connect with the messages associated with it as well. And once I had that, once that happened, then it was 4 months from, oh my gosh, we're going to write it as a parable to published and released out to the world.
Well, I experienced it as everything you just said, so I thought it was just fantastic. And that, it wasn't another kind of like where your point is. It's not another boring business book. Like do these things, put this spreadsheet in place or whatever
Right.
it is. The 12 principles, so we could probably spend 6 hours and not do them all justice in this conversation. But the first one, the morning five, arise early and be a creator. Um, so it's in the context of a dealership and fast growth, and it's a parable, but it's actually your experience being a general manager and making this happen, growing 800% at a dealership.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the morning five, and then just kind of dripped into how this could apply to every individual and just how they look at their personal life and getting started for the day.
So the morning five is a morning routine process that I created and developed over time to ultimately tap into mind, body, and spirit every day before we go out into the world, out into the universe. And really, where it stemmed from is I experienced a season of life where basically I had made all the mistakes that you could possibly make. I had burned all the bridges you could possibly burn, and, coming out of Flagstaff, where I was originally for a while, I spent about 18 months, um, kinda couch surfing down through Phoenix and Scottsdale and over to Las Vegas and then over to California and San Diego, and I, found myself homeless in San Diego for a short period of time. The homelessness led to a deep depression. The deep depression led to suicidal thoughts. Suicidal thoughts ultimately led to me attempting to take my own life. I tried to drown myself in the Pacific Ocean just off the coast of La Jolla, California. And so what was interesting was right on the backside of that attempt, I was laying on the beach. I was looking up at the stars. And, I heard the voice of a God that I never believed in, and that voice said, "You take yourself wherever you go." Those were the words I heard. "You take yourself wherever you go." I was like, "What does that mean? I don't understand what that means. Is that like a fortune cookie or something? Like, you take yourself wherever you go?" Like, I didn't know what that meant, but then all of a sudden, I kinda had this flash, this wave of different cities I'd lived in, different friend circles that I'd had, different jobs that I'd participated in. All of these things were different, and yet the results kept being the same for me. And once I kind of looked at that, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. There was only one constant in every negative situation in my life. The only constant was me. You take yourself wherever you go. So once I saw that, I was like, okay, wait a minute. So I am actually the catalyst of all things negative in my life. Cause at the time I believed I was a victim to all of it, man. I thought it was everybody else's fault. I blamed everybody else for every negative thing in my life. It was never couldn't be my fault. And so in that moment, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm actually the catalyst for all things negative in my life. So that led me to ask a question. Can I be a catalyst for good things in my life? If I can be a catalyst for bad, liking to think that potentially I could be a catalyst for good things. So that question sent me on a bit of a journey. I started studying, where does this power come from? Our ability to be the catalyst for negative and positive things in our lives. It has to come from somewhere. And so I actually landed for a small period of time. I landed at the Orange County Church of Scientology, and I started studying things around the mind and the brain. And they introduced me to this idea that we have they call it a thetan. Most people call it a soul, but they introduced me to this idea, which I didn't believe at the time, but they introduced me to the idea that we are actually spiritual beings, not just mind and body, but mind, body, spirit. And after about 6 months at the Church of Scientology, I decided that wasn't a fit for me. And so I went and studied um, Catholicism and Buddhism and Hinduism. I just started studying all these other kind of religions to try to understand what is this aspect of myself that is not mind and is not body. Like, what is it? And ultimately, I found a path to spiritual connection through the works and the life of Jesus and Christianity. And so once I kind of started tapping into this idea that we are mind, body, spirit, I was like, okay, great. Now I get that. So how can I want to study people that seem to have activated, higher levels of success. There's got to be some spiritual aspect to that. So I started studying Les Brown and Eric Thomas and Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar, Napoleon Hill. I started going into this whole world of personal development. And once I kind of tapped in, I know this is a long-winded answer, but I'm going to get to the point here in just a second. Once I started tapping into this idea of personal development, I started to see trends in some of the most successful politicians, some of the most successful movie stars, musicians. There's kind of patterns that started to develop. And the primary pattern that I found is that all successful people have some sort of powerful morning routine, something that taps into mind, body, and spirit, every single one of them. Now, they do it at different times, right? Like Beyonce, for example, I read Beyonce, the first 2 hours when she wakes up, that's when she does her morning routine. But that might not be till 2 o'clock in the afternoon because she was up doing a show until 3 o'clock in the morning, or she was out until 6 o'clock in the morning doing whatever. So it's not what time people wake up. It's not always necessarily exactly in the morning, but what they do when they first wake up is what I consider a morning routine. And everyone across the board that is at some sort of high level of success has a very consistent, powerful morning routine. So once I recognize that pattern, I'm like, okay, well, I don't have a powerful morning routine. So maybe I need to get one. So I started studying all these different aspects of different people's morning routines. Tony Robbins was saying, you got to take a cold shower every day, right? You got to take a cold shower. So I was like, all right, let's go do that. So I took one cold shower, and guess what? I quickly realized I don't like cold showers.
For you, right? It wasn't for you.
Was not for me, man. I'm like, no, this makes me mad. It makes me angry. This does not put me in a good state. Now, I am a big fan of a nice cold plunge followed by a hot shower, but the cold shower thing just pissed me off, right? So it wasn't for me. And so I just kind of tested out all these different aspects of people's morning routines. And ultimately, I figured out 5 simple steps that work wonderfully for me every single morning. And after many, many years of applying them in my life, I ended up writing a book called The Morning Five, 5 Simple Steps to an Extraordinary Life. And I began teaching and sharing the Morning Five with people all over the world and seeing it make an impact in their lives. And so I believe it's the foundation of everything. You've got to have a powerful morning routine. And so when somebody signs up for my membership or for my coaching or for my consulting or, connects with me in any way, shape, or form, that's always where we start. We start with the morning 5 simple steps to an extraordinary life. If you change the way you start your day, it makes a massive impact. So there's the birth of the morning 5. Sorry, I had to take you the long way around, but there's the birth of the morning 5 and how it
It's
actually.
actually all really good, and I'm curious, sort of at the beginning of your answer, what is this thing that gives people this, a drive to be a force for, positive energy, good in the world, and those that kind of sit back and criticize the world and wait for somebody else to do it? I actually lead 5 different communities of families. One of the organizations I'm currently CEO of is called Dinner Table,
Nice.
and it's really common when we meet each one of these communities, a growing group of families that they get excited in the room and they write all these things down, and then they don't do it. They come back to the next meeting, they get excited again, and they'll point out almost like a victim mentality a lot of times, because a lot of the communities I work with are lower income, underserved communities, and you have to lean in and actually make something happen. And so I like posing the question, what does it mean to be a leader in your family? And what would it be like for you? And don't you think you can be that leader that makes this stuff happen? You're the emotional safety net. You're all of these things going forward. And then I reflect on like my history. I've always had this drive. Like I never didn't have it. And
Mhm.
so what did you it sounds like the foundation is the morning routine and making a conscious choice to do it. But I've always had it, even coming from low income family, lots of, family members in and out of prison, just not a good environment, but I still had that.
Mhm.
So was I born with it? I I think so. Where does this come, like, what did you learn about that and all the studying and how to bring that to light? Because I think it's in all of us. We just need to light that spark.
Yeah, I do believe it is in everyone. Very, very, at least in my life, I have 9 kids, man. I have 9 very different, very unique kids, and I have had the opportunity to have a bird's eye view of, the first couple years of a child's life, and I've so far in my life, I've never run across a baby that wasn't curious. I never ran across a baby that didn't have the desire to one day crawl or one day get up and walk. I've never run across a baby that doesn't reach out and stick things in its mouth and try new things and so on and so forth, right? Like it's just never been the case. Now I have met people that have gone through or grown up in or whatever environmentally to the point where now they're not courageous anymore. Now they're not curious anymore. Now they don't want to reach out. They don't want to try new things, right? I've definitely run into a lot of that. And so my hypothesis is that we're all born with this nature, but somewhere along the line, environmentally, either our environment um, brings more of it out of us or our environment cuts it off, right? Cuts it off. Not permanently. I've seen many people have their lives transformed, especially when they start tapping into morning routines, not permanently. But I have seen a lot of people where it gets cut off. So I think the answer is that we are all born with a desire to grow, to evolve, to get out there, to make an impact, to make a difference. But based on our environment, and it's not even necessarily like I don't wanna say parents, right? Like, you could have really, really, really cool parents that are doing the best thing that they think they should be possibly doing, and that somehow has an adverse effect where the kid shuts down versus the kid opening up and vice versa. You can have really crappy parents, and I've seen some amazing people come out of really, really, really crappy environments, right? So, I think that part's interesting. I don't think there's any definite, parent this way and the child ends up this way. I don't think there's any definite to that. But I do believe my hypothesis is that the environment ultimately shapes the man.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree. Some just have it and it doesn't matter, and thankfully, I just sort of had that, my entire life, no matter what was going on around me. In fact, the worse it got, the more I had of that thing.
Right. Right.
And kids all are born, very present and very curious, and 3 of my internal mantras, literally every day, I mean, I don't go around saying it over and over in my head, but do less better is one, struggle better is another one, and be as present and curious in every moment that I can be. It's like every day is an opportunity for me, it's moving meditation. I don't need to sit there to be present and curious with nothing going on. Being present and curious in the middle of chaos, I think that's the work going in.
No doubt, man. I agree and I align with that. I love that. There's a quote by I believe it's Andrew Jackson. He says, I was built for the storms and a calm does not suit me. And that kinda defines me. Somehow I was built for the storms and a calm does not suit me. Like, I need things going on. That's where the growth is at.
Yeah, all of the opportunity in the world is in the struggle, all of it.
Yep.
And even unhealthy struggle, there's so much to be gained in terms of, wisdom and learnings to apply in the future to create even more value. And I don't think it's good for us not to struggle, preferably healthy struggles, mentally, emotionally, physically, professionally, personally, like all of that, why would you drift away? And I feel like culture in the United States, if it's hard, something's wrong. And there's thousands of gurus that will take your money to try to figure out how to make things not hard. And I think that's going the wrong direction completely.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Again, kinda with the kids, I see this cycle, right? We go through this cycle where something changes. There's a mentality change or some sort of physical outside change, but something changes, and change is always followed by struggle. Always, every single time. And then struggle is what actually creates the muscles, the coordination, the skill sets that you need for growth, right? So the struggle, when my kids are struggling to push themselves off the floor, they're actually growing the muscles that are one day going to allow them to crawl, right? So the struggle is where the growth happens. And then success is on the other side of growth. But what's interesting is as soon as you reach a success point, right? I just learned how to crawl. I just learned how to walk. I just learned how to run. I just learned how to, my first job. I just learned how to date. I just learned how to, whatever it is. As soon as you reach some sort of success level, well, guess what? Something changes and then you struggle and then there's growth and then there's success. And so I teach all the time this process of change, struggle, grow, succeed. And whichever season you're in right now, just know that it won't last because it's all seasonal. Everything's seasonal. If you're in a season of struggle right now, great. Growth is on the way. If you're in a season of success right now, great. Change is on the way. Like it's always evolving.
Yeah, I actually think the purpose of human existence is to elevate human consciousness, starting with your own. Because the more we figure out, the more connected, where everything gets easier, like everything gets better. And you and I are saying the same thing with different
Yeah.
ways of sort of explaining it. But I called it, or I call it today, the value creation cycle. And this started for me at 6 years old, pulling weeds for 25 cents an hour back in the mid '60s. Um, Struggle to get a capability that elevates self-esteem, use it to create value. It elevates self-esteem even more. And then you can keep taking bigger steps if you want. And that's where I learned over time to trust the struggle, because the harder it is, I get this warm feeling. It's like, if I stay the course, this is going to be amazing when I come out the other
Right.
side.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and I look at the dealership journey and the 12 titles and implementing it. I think a lot of leaders, owners of organizations, and I get to work with so many different, business leaders and industries and all of it. And according to Grant Cardone, you can only do car dealerships. You can't do anything else. That's what I've heard. Obviously, totally kidding here.
He likes to jab at me, man. He's been trying for years and years and years to get me to kind of expand our offerings, and so he loves jabbing at me. He knows
Yeah,
it gets under my skin.
it applies everywhere. The 12 principles apply everywhere. We
Yeah.
can't get into all of them today, but I recommend all the listeners read or listen to the legacy titles.
Oh, thank
But
you.
they want to set it and forget it. I'll just put this stuff in place. I'll hand it off to somebody, and it will just work. Well, it can't. I mean, it's got to be this, in my view, a commitment to a way of being as a leader and running a business and the environment and everything you want. But I'm curious, you went from 100 to 120, cars, being sold in a month, and then you jumped it to over 1,000 in the best month over about 5, 6 years, just under 6 years. And what did that journey feel like? Because my experience growing my own businesses, and biggest one employee wise had over 500 team members,
Wow.
it got easier towards the end. Like the beginning is really hard putting this stuff in place and making it go. And I think it's just total common sense to guys like you and I, but it's not for most of the rest of the world. It's not. They can't connect the dots to the value in that. But it got easier. It got more fun. And I've experienced a lot of automotive dealerships, and you can feel the energy when they want to do it right, and you can feel the energy where they're really bad actors. And there's a lot of good reason why automotive dealerships can have a bad reputation out there. But what did that journey feel like? The struggles in the beginning as you were making these changes to what it was like at the end.
Yeah, it was really interesting because in the beginning, when I first walked into, that dealership had been there for 50 years. It was family owned and operated. Um, it had just been bought by the third generation. So Originally, a guy named Sam Cummins owned it, and then it was Dan Cummins, and now Josh and Dusty Cummins had just bought it from their dad. They bought it 11 days before I started working there. And so the timing was great because here we were in an old established business that had, you know, a Rolodex. It had a Rolodex of clients. It had a service department, you know. Um, the base was there, and we had me, who I had just moved into the city of Paris. I had a new baby, and then Josh and Dusty had just bought this from their dad, so they were excited, right? So like it was a real cool combination of tradition and some new energy. I don't think we could have done it any other way. Like if it was still under the same owners that had been there, for 10, 20 years, I think it would have been much more challenging. But there was just this energy, this new energy. And so in the beginning, it was just really trying to identify how we could separate ourselves from the rest of the dealerships, in the United States of America. We literally wrote a list down one day, like, what is it that customers hate about dealerships? We wrote that down. And then we wrote down, what is it that employees hate about working in car dealerships? And we wrote that down. And then once we had those two lists, we were like, all right, let's just do the opposite of everything on this list and see what happens. And that was a journey in itself. Well, how do you do that? How do you do the opposite of what's been tried and true for the last 70 years in this business, right? So I think, to answer your question, the beginning was definitely much more challenging. I mean, it was way easier once we were up to, 300 employees, and, we're selling 30, 40, 50 cars a day, and cash flows operating at a massive level. And we have resources and partnerships, much easier than the end. I will say this though the beginning was much more challenging, the beginning was also much more rewarding, because we were exploring our imaginations. We were taking curiosity and plugging it into every aspect of something that had been built, tried and true for so many years, and looking at it and saying, can this be done different? And we would try one way and it wouldn't work. And then we'd try another way and it wouldn't work. And we'd try another way, it wouldn't work. And then we'd try something and it would work. And it was like this aha moment, like, oh my gosh. And so we stacked a lot of aha moments over the years. Once it got big and just kind of on cruise control a little bit, a lot of those aha moments went away, right? We had increased efficiencies in all the different areas, second largest car dealership in the United States of America. It just kind of reached a point where we were just, you know, almost going through the motions. Whereas those beginning stages, it was chaos, man. It was crazy. And
Where the accomplishment would just feel amazing. So I totally get
yeah,
it. And I remember the early years kind of similar. I knew we were doing the right work. We were winning as well. We were growing fast and for years and years. But the harder it got, the harder we laughed. That's how I knew we were doing the right work. It was
yeah,
so really amazing. Yeah, I went to so your achievement there is remarkable for a lot of reasons. But I recently went to a dealership to help one of my grandnieces get her first car a couple months ago.
nice.
It's a Toyota dealership here in Phoenix, and they sell over 1,000 cars a month. I went back to the sales bullpen, if you will, and I asked the question, like, how many salespeople? And they have got like 115 salespeople. So you
Wow.
did it with just over 40 selling
Yeah,
certain cars
43.
in a town of a population under 10,000. Like, how did you do that? That's you had to have sold out of state or other metro areas maybe, or how'd that work out?
Yeah, we took we took a look, and this is basically what we did throughout the entire journey. Is we would take a look at things that we fundamentally believed to be true, and we would ask ourselves, well, what if they weren't? What if they weren't true? Right? And so one of the fundamental beliefs in the auto industry is that everything's based on markets, zones, regions. From the beginning of the time, they drew all these kind of boundaries, and they said, "Here's your dealership. So this is your market, and this is your region, and this is your territory, and this is what's possible to you. This is what's available." And most dealers in this country to this day live and die by that. If you talk to a car dealer and ask them where they stand, they won't tell you where they stand on a national level. They'll tell you where they stand in their market. How much market penetration are they getting? Where do they stand in their zone, their region? And so we looked at that and said, what if we changed the boundaries of what we consider our market, our region? How would things change then? So instead of just being the Southeast region that they wanted to put us in, we decided if we don't have to put it on a boat, then we can sell it. We can do business. So if we can drive to a place, then I can sell a car into that place. So Oregon, Nevada, Arizona, California, New York, Florida, Texas, all of that suddenly became our market. So then we started asking those questions. Well, if our market is the entire United States except for Hawaii, because you can't get there without getting on a boat. If this is our whole market, then what does our marketing strategy have to look like? And then that led us to, well, we can't afford to advertise in all, 48 lower continental states. That would cost us too much money. But there's this thing called social media that's free. And if we do social media right, it can get us into all 48 states, right? So then that led to the next question. Well, how do we do social media right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So by changing that one fundamental belief that our market was just our backyard to our market is actually the continental United States of America, it changed every action that we took moving forward. So until we got to the point where we were drawing people in from literally all over the United States.
That's incredible. And I heard you say in one of the interviews that, hey, we're kind of the same as everybody else. The other dealerships have great service. They can sell you a new car. They can do all of that. But it's about the people internally. What I was thinking as I was listening to that was, you know what, it feels different for the customer too, that there's a different energy. So
Yeah.
I think it's good across the board. Now, you did so many cool things. One that stood out to me was, hey, we're not going to hire anybody with very few exceptions that has 2 or more years of experience. And if they want to start, we're going to have them work for 1 to 2 weeks, open to close, get exposure to every part of the organization, service, washing cars,
Yeah.
parking, whatever it is, with no guarantee of employment at the end, just to see who they are.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. And then I started going, well, I wonder what company that wouldn't work for. And I couldn't think of one. It's like
Mm.
a strategy across the board. So talk about that and the why you did it and what you noticed as some really cool epiphany wins from that strategy. Amazing, by the way. Yeah.
Well, thank you, man. That was another thing where we kind of looked at the fundamental truths that existed, especially in our industry, right? For the most part, people were always looking for people with experience, and everyone interviews great, right? Everyone that we hired always interviewed great. Now, there were people we didn't hire that didn't interview great, but everyone that we hired always interviewed great. No one shows up for the interview and says, hey, I actually on the back end, I'm not very driven. I don't have a whole lot of motivation. And if you're not continually, whipping me, I'm not going to perform. Nobody says that in the interview. Right.
It's my whip,
And
my preferred whip, right?
yeah, that's right. That's right. Nobody does that. And so I looked at it and said, okay, wait a minute. What if we did the opposite? What if we only hired people that didn't have experience in the car business so that they would only know our way of doing things. They wouldn't necessarily have bad habits that they'd picked up for decades on decades working in other dealerships. So what if we only hired people that had very little to no experience? And what if we just hired them on character, not credentials? And then once we hire them, what if we put them through something that's truly going to show me their character, because I don't know their character in a 20-minute interview. I know that they're giving me the polished version, but how do they act, react, perform when they're tired? How do they act, react, perform when they're frustrated? How do they act, react, perform when they're overworked and underappreciated? Right? Like, I want to know their true character. And the only way I could get that, to get their true characters, I had to put them. There's a reason the military puts these guys through boot camp. Like, they're trying to figure out who are my soldiers, right? Like, who's gonna show up and who's not, who's weak and who's strong. You don't just go, I'm in the military, and then the next day they've got you out on missions that are important to the survival of the United States of America. No. You got to go through the ringer first so we can figure out who you are. And so we created just a 2-week boot camp right there within the dealership. And that boot camp meant that you showed up at work at 8 a.m. and you went home around 8 or 9 at night, and you did it every day for 2 weeks with no day off. We were closed on Sunday, so I guess one day off there in the middle. And you had to work in all the different departments. We did one day in detail where you're washing cars and you're getting dirty and muddy. And if it's cold, it's cold. If it's hot, it's hot. And you got one day in service where you're dealing where, nobody ever wants to be in a service department. They're only there because they have a problem. That's the whole issue with the service department, right? And so through that whole process, I would hire in groups of 10 to 14 people. And by the time I got to the end, I'd have 5 or 6 left. And those 5 or 6 that I had left, those were the good ones. They actually were the type of people that we were looking to be on a team with. We got to work with these people. So yeah, it just really worked, man. And it really just came from relooking at, what if we kind of do the opposite of what we've always done so that we can get a different result?
Yeah, and reflecting on over the years hiring thousands of employees just for my companies, I don't know anybody that could fake it for 2 weeks.
Right.
Like, can't. And I've always known that within the first week, if I have a superstar, I know within the first week.
Yeah.
If I don't know after 30 days, I have a solid middle performer, maybe, or worse than that, in there. So I love that. I'm going to incorporate that in a lot of things that I'm doing wherever I possibly can.
That's awesome, man.
One other thing that I thought was interesting, and I've heard a number of different, number of times days doing something to develop a habit. I believe you were like 67 days to make it easier to do it than not do it.
Correct.
How did that? So again, 66 days, it's way harder to do it or harder to do it than not do it. But then all of a sudden it flips. What did that look like at sort of scale inside of an organization and implementing those kinds of things and staying the course for 67 days to make it easier for the employees to do it than not do it?
Yeah, that was a really big part of our ability to go through this, Lee. Most businesses in my space operates in 30-day windows. Everything's a 30-day window. Financial statement comes out every 30 days. The manufacturer launches their new incentives and rebates every 30 days. Pay plans are set up. Everybody gets paid monthly. Like, everything's a 30-day window, 30-day cycle. And what I find fascinating is 90% of car dealerships in this country with different tools, different technology, and different opportunities, 90% of the car dealerships in this country still sell the same amount of cars today that they sold 30 years ago. Right? And so it's like, okay, wait a minute. Things are changing. Well, why aren't the results changing at all? And I came to realize it's because they operate in 30-day windows. And you can't actually cement change in a 30-day window. So they all have this desire. They're like, oh, there's this new thing, and here's what we're going to do, and we're going to do it, and it's going to be great, right? And they put it in place, and then 30 days later, they get their financial statements, and they don't look like they want them to look, and they go, okay, we're not doing that anymore. All right, that didn't work. Let's try this. And they're constantly trying all of these things versus cementing the behaviors and habits and patterns that actually drive powerful results. There's a reason I noticed, and maybe more over in your space, you see it, but A lot of big corporations, they work in quarterly, everything's quarter, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. Well, a quarter is 90 days. That actually gives things time to stick, right? And so once you kind of know that it's going to take 2.5 months before something becomes easier to do than to not do as a leader, you make your decisions differently. If I'm going to roll something out knowing that it's going to take me 2.5 months of constant reminders, 2.5 months of accountability, 2.5 months of training, 2.5 months of every single day saying, hey, Lee, did you do it? Hey, Lee, did you do it? Hey, Lee, did you do it? If I know that, I might not roll something out because I don't want to put the energy or effort into it. Or I'm going to be certain that it is the thing we need to roll out because I need to put the energy and effort into it. So understanding the timeline and window that it takes to really create or implement change in your business, in your life, in an organization, in your family, or whatever helps you make that decision if it's whether or not it's something you really want to do. And then having the ability to stick to it is how you actually create growth and change and scale.
Yeah, the challenge from my view is that most CEOs won't have the discipline to keep it going. So there has to be a way to operationalize it. Like this is what we do, and everybody
Yeah.
needs to do what they say they're going to do. And I see the same thing in families as a challenge. Parents are saying, "How come kids, you're not doing what I asked you to do when I asked you to do it?" And yet the parents aren't doing what they said they would do. It's like,
That's
okay,
right.
this is kids are smart. They pay attention. It's like, why should I have to do it? I'm in there.
Yep.
So I think that's like operationalizing. And I said it a while ago in our discussion, making it how you breathe, like doing, this is the way we run the business. I love doing it this way. Not I'm looking for a magic pill or silver bullet that's going to make all these things go away. And we're going to keep growing into oblivion. It just never happens. All right. So here's another question. I've never heard anybody say this before. How you want to be positioned at 50. I think you're within 2 years, about 2 years away from making that, from being
Yeah.
50. But how you're going to be positioned and who gets to make the choice based on that positioning,
Yeah.
please do that for our listeners. That is,
Yeah. So I made a promise to my wife, man. My wife is, man, she's just an incredible person. She's an incredible human being. She homeschools all of my children. She's a homebody. She loves being at home. She's very traditional type person. She's out, gardening and crocheting while I'm out here, playing with AI and traveling around the world, speaking on stages. She's an introvert. I'm an extrovert. We're just very different humans. And she's always been so incredibly supportive. And I have taken her through all of the ups and downs that go with, entrepreneurship, from, hey, honey, I need a way to charge somebody $50 for a planner, which was like the first transaction we did as a business all these years ago, to her managing, payroll for a team and millions and millions of dollars of transactions. And she just took it all with a grain of salt. We did retire her from the business recently, by the way. And we got an actual accountant in here, but, she's just always been so supportive. And so I made her a promise. It'll be 8 years ago now. In 8 days, it'll be 8 years ago. I made her a promise. I said, honey, if you'll roll with me on this thing for a decade, then when I turn 50 years old, I will hand over the reins. Like, we will be in a position financially where we will be completely free for you to choose what our life looks like for the next few decades, right? Because she has always just supported my visions, my dreams, and where I see us going. And I feel like she gets a shot, man. She deserves a shot to say, hey, I want our life to look like this. And if she says, I want to go into the middle of Wyoming and buy 1,000 acres and raise cattle, then that's what we're going to go do. Now, I personally won't touch the cattle. She could do that part, but that's where we're going. And that's what we're doing because I feel like she deserves that. Now, what she'll probably do is say, get out of my face. You're bothering me. I'm trying to crochet my blankets over here. Leave me alone. That's probably what she'll say when I turn 50. But I really, really, really want her to have a choice and have a say, because up until now, she's just always been the biggest cheerleader. And I think that she deserves that. So that's the goal for me. I want to build this thing as big as I can, get a big exit, make a big impact, and be able to see what the rest of our life looks like with a little guidance from the missus.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great partnership. Like how, in my view, how we feel going through life is everything.
Yeah.
Money is great for financial peace of mind, whatever you want to think about it. Like we don't want to worry about it or cause stress. But the emotional energy, what it feels like to be in the family, how connected we are, family, community, higher power, all of that. That to me is a combination of what it means to kind of go through life and make it super fulfilling. And it feels like you've really tapped into that. You've figured that out with a family and business, and then how you're taking this to the rest of the world.
Well, thanks, man. And I think every day is true. Every day there's new lessons to learn, and every time we kind of get one thing figured out, then we realize there's some other things we got to get figured out. So it's definitely always a journey, but I do feel blessed to be in a very, very, very strong relationship with my wife, strong relationship with my kids, strong relationship with God, and I feel really blessed to for those things, and it makes the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows and so on and so forth. It makes them a lot more palpable, knowing that it's all part of something bigger.
That is awesome. Well,
Yeah.
for sure, we're running up on time. I'd love to have you back in a couple of years to see what that decision was all about, or
That'd be great.
or maybe sooner. We've only gotten into two of the principles here. We could do more, but if our listeners want to learn more about your work or connect with you, what should they do or where should they go?
Yeah, best thing to do, you can just Google Glenn Lundy. You can find me a lot of different ways. I do have a website, glennlundy.com, which links you to my shows and my books and so on and so forth. But whatever the best path is for you, I'm pretty easy to find. I think I might be the only Glenn Lundy in the world who decided to take personal branding seriously. So search for Glenn Lundy. You'll find me, and let's connect.
All right, sounds good. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
No, man, just this has been great, Lee. This has really been a great conversation, and I'm glad that we are connected. I'm super curious to learn a lot more about you and the things that you're doing out there in my old home state of Arizona. And I look forward to getting to know you and seeing where the universe takes this relationship.
Well, if you ever get through here, stop by. I'll buy you lunch, whatever. I'm actually calling from my home music recording studio right now, and yeah, I'd love to get together if you come out here.
That'd be great, man. What part of Phoenix are you in?
Around probably closest crossroads, Shea and the 51 freeway.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, we had a serial arsonist 23 years ago in town. He burned about 10 homes down. Mine was the first and second home he burned down.
Oh my goodness.
Third time's the charm. Once he got thrown in prison, I was able to build here. It was just flat 2 acres near the mountain preserve, and
Wow.
I wanted to be here because I love hiking, and I'm just
Yeah.
it's an amazing place.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, yes, definitely looking forward to connecting. This has been great. You're a great interviewer, awesome questions, and I appreciate the space.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed every one of the 12 hours getting ready for this, and I'm going to listen to your podcast. So I just love the energy. It's amazing. So thank you again, Glenn. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
Okay. And this has been the Show Your Value podcast. If you got some value out of today's episode, I certainly did. Please like and subscribe. And until next time, show your value to the world.